Okay, for today's social studies, we are going over our chapter 2 comprehension to prepare for our test tomorrow. Our first question was glaciers long ago helped form today's landscape in Minnesota. As glaciers melted, they formed thousands of what? Leah? Lakes. Very good.
What about rivers?
What about what? That is a good point, Joseph. I will accept ridges. That is a landform that they did form. So I will accept ridges. All right. Ancient life in Minnesota. In addition to petroglyphs, what are two types of evidence found in Minnesota that show people have been living here for thousands of years? Zoe? Okay, they found arrows and charcoal. So the arrows would be part of artifacts. Yeah, the arrowheads. I knew that's what I was envisioning. So the arrowheads would be artifacts. So with the charcoal, Caitlin?
You put down pots and baskets.
Yes, the pots and baskets, those fall under artifacts. So that counts. Zoe? Or Leah? Carvings would not count because they already said the petroglyphs, and that's what the petroglyphs are. So it had to be something else besides that. Katie?
So like the charcoal and the stone tools they found at the website, would that count too?
Yes. And the human remains, the bones, that counts also. Okay. All right. One way of knowing oral history. According to oral histories, was one possible meaning of the hand petroglyphs at Jeffers? Katie? Friendship. Finn? Oh, you're going to say friendship too? Nathan?
Death of a member.
Yep. Death. Joseph? Grief. Cole?
Could you put an important event?
It would have to be list the important events, like the death or the welcoming of people in. Another way of knowing archaeology would be read about the archaeological experiment. And the question is, what outcome did these archaeologists predict about that hand petroglyph? Ashley?
It would take several hours to carve.
Yeah, they predicted it would take several hours to carve a petroglyph of that hand. So were they correct? No, their hypothesis was not correct. It only took like 40 minutes. So it went a lot faster than they had thought. Now we have the parts of the scientific method. What is the first step? Paisley? Ask a question. What is the second step? Lily? State the hypothesis. What's the third step, Caitlin? Perform an experiment. What's the fourth step? Ashley? Record the findings. And what's the last step, Will? The conclusion. Reach the conclusion. It is important that you know all 5 of those steps in order. You will see that again real soon. Make sure you know them. Next question. When it comes to the Jeffers petroglyphs, what is one thing archaeologists and American Indian elders agree on? So what do they agree on together, Katie? Yeah, that it shows us that people lived here in Minnesota a very long time ago. That people have been living here for thousands of years. So they agree. They might not agree on the meanings behind the petroglyphs, but they agree that it means people lived here. So the sidebar told us about Minnesota and the U.S. laws that protect burial mounds built by American Indian people long ago. What is one thing that museums today must do as a result of these laws? Cole?
That they have to protect the burial mound?
Meaning what? Like they've already had things
So they don't get
happening.
destroyed?
What?
So they don't get destroyed?
Not quite. That's not what the museums have to do. So that is more of like the park people. So what do the museums have to do, Caitlin?
Don't they actually turn the artifacts?
They had to return American Indian items to their descendants. Because remember, it wasn't all donated to the museums. People came in, they moved the burial mounds because they wanted the land, and they took stuff. And then some of that stuff got sent to museums later, but they didn't have the permission to donate it to the museum. So the laws now say it has to go back to the descendants, and the descendants can choose what to do with all of these artifacts. But it's important that we acknowledge that they were taken without permission. So that is it for the review of the comprehension questions. A lot of this stuff, you will see stuff pertaining to this on the test tomorrow. Shh. So remember that our test is tomorrow. You do want to study up on this. It will be important to know. Shh. It will be important to know 2 examples of how oral history can help keep a group's history alive. So you might want to write that on your paper so you know to study it. 2 examples of how oral history helps keep the group's history alive. You need 2 examples of how a person's perspective can be affected. What could affect someone's perspective? On this sheet, there isn't any questions about perspective. There will be on the test. So know 2 things that could affect someone's perspective. And you also need to know how Minnesota's landscape and climate have changed over the last 12,000 years. So those of us that are paying attention are going to be helped on the test because I'm giving you some big hints. And if you need to go back to watch the video tonight to help you remember what those hints were, you can do that. So you're going to want to know how the landscape and climate have changed in Minnesota over the 12,000 years. Yes. You need 2 examples of how a person's perspective can be affected. And you need 2 examples of how oral history can help keep a group's history alive. With that, I'm going to stop the recording.